The mind eraser had never been one to care about anyone. He was a soldier, trained to fight, to kill, and to erase memories. His name was known across the galaxy, feared by enemies and allies alike. With just one touch, he could wipe someone's memories clean, leaving them as empty as a blank page. It was a power he had learned to control, a power that made him unstoppable, but also isolated. He had learned to shut out emotions, to turn off his heart like a light switch. He had no room for love, no room for weakness. But even the coldest warriors have their limits. The mission he was on now was unlike any other. A galactic war was on the horizon, and it was his job to eliminate a key figure on the other side, an alien leader, Dodd, whose influence had grown far too powerful. The leader was known as Zoroth, a ruthless commander who had plans to destroy Earth and the entire human fleet. It was the Mind Eraser's task to stop him, to kill him before he could launch his attack. As he stood aboard his stealth ship, heading toward Zoroth's stronghold, his mind drifted. It had been years since he had thought about her. The woman he once loved, the woman he had erased from his memory. She was part of his past, a past he never allowed himself to revisit. But today, as he prepared for the mission, her face flashed in his mind like a ghost he couldn't chase away. Her name had been Alara. Alara was a scientist, brilliant and kind. She had worked with the Mind Eraser on a project that involved high-tech weapons that could change the balance of power in the galaxy. But it wasn't her work that had drawn him to her. It was her smile, the way she saw the world with so much hope. It was the way she had cared about him, even when he hadn't wanted to care about her. He had never wanted to fall in love, never thought he could. But then Alara had changed everything. She had shown him a side of himself he didn't know existed. She made him feel human again, but that was before the betrayal, before she had made the decision that tore them apart. He had been ordered to erase her memories. The mission was to ensure she never remembered anything about the dangerous project she had been involved in. But something went wrong. She had learned too much, and the enemy was closing in. He couldn't protect her, so he did the only thing he knew how to do. Erased her memories. He made her forget their love, their time together. He made her forget him. And then she was gone from his life, just a shadow in his past, fading away like the rest of the people he had been forced to forget. Now, as the Mind Eraser prepared for the final assault on Zoroth's stronghold, he couldn't help but feel the emptiness in his chest. It was a feeling he hadn't experienced in a long time. But it was there, gnawing at him, reminding him of everything he had lost. He had done his job, erasing memories and killing enemies without hesitation, but this mission, this war, it felt different, felt personal. The ship's engine hummed quietly as he approached Zoroth's base. His mission was clear: infiltrate the stronghold, eliminate Zoroth, and prevent the attack on Earth. There was no room for failure. Why? But as he thought about the task ahead, his thoughts kept drifting back to Alara. Was she still out there? Did she'll remember anything of their time together? Or had his erasure worked so completely that she had forgotten everything about him, including the love they had shared? He shook his head, trying to push those thoughts away. There was no place for feelings in this war. He had a job to do. He couldn't let himself get distracted. But deep down, he knew the truth. No matter how hard he tried to bury it, the feelings he had for Alara were still there, still alive, still haunting him. His ship dropped out of stealth mode as they entered the atmosphere of the alien planet. He could see Zoroth's stronghold in the distance, a massive structure that stretched high into the sky. It was heavily guarded, surrounded by layers of security. But the Mind Eraser wasn't worried. He had done this 1,000 times before. His training, his abilities, would see him through. He was a weapon, a tool of the galaxy's defense. And nothing would stop him from completing his mission. As he landed the ship, he felt the familiar rush of adrenaline. He was ready, stepped out of the ship and into the dark, cold night. His mind was focused, sharp, ready to do what needed to be done. But as he moved through the shadows, something inside him shifted. The weight of his past, the memories of Alara, pressed down on him like a heavy stone. He couldn't forget her. No matter how hard he tried, he'd erased her. But she would never truly be gone. He would carry her with. The mind eraser stood in the dark shadows of the enemy's stronghold, ready for the task ahead. His thoughts, however, kept drifting back to the past. It wasn't the first time his memories had come to haunt him. But tonight, they were louder. The more he thought about the mission, the more his mind returned to her Lara. Her face flashed in his mind again. That beautiful, innocent smile. He remembered the way her eyes sparkled when she spoke about her work, her passion. She was brilliant, one of the best scientists he had ever known. She had always looked at him like he was more than just a soldier, like he was someone who mattered. He had never felt that way before. Not from anyone. It wasn't supposed to happen. He was trained to keep his distance from people. He had been taught that emotions were a weakness, that love was something soldiers couldn't afford. But with Ilara, everything changed. They had met in a laboratory of all places. She was working on a project involving advanced weaponry, something the galaxy had never seen before. He had been assigned to guard her. First he had stayed distant, keeping his focus on his job, always watching her from the sidelines. But soon he found himself drawn to her. It wasn't just her intelligence, it was the way she spoke to him, as if she could see past the cold, emotionless soldier. She made him feel things he had never felt before: hope, warmth, and yes, love. They spent months together, working on the project, and somewhere along the way they became more than just colleagues. They fell in love. A love that was forbidden, dangerous even. She knew the risks of being with someone like him, someone who could erase memories with just a touch. But it didn't matter. They made it work. For a time, it felt like they could have everything, but everything came crashing down when Ilara found herself in the middle of a secret war. She had uncovered information that could destroy entire civilizations, information that the wrong people could use to tear the galaxy apart. The mind eraser was sent to stop her from revealing it, but he never expected what happened next. The higher-ups in the military had given him a mission, one he couldn't refuse. He had to erase Ilara's memories, make her forget everything about the project, and remove any trace of her involvement. It was the only way to protect her, or so they told him. But when he arrived at her door, when he saw her face, desperate, confused, and scared, he couldn't bring himself to do it at first. He tried to talk to her, to make her understand. But the more he spoke, the more she resisted. She didn't want to forget. She didn't want to lose everything they had built together. And in that moment, the mind eraser realized that he was the one who had to let go. He had erased her memories that night, removing everything: the love, the trust, the joy they had shared. It was as if it never happened. Ilara became a stranger, someone he didn't recognize. She forgot him, just as he had been ordered to make her. And he left, knowing he had just destroyed the most important part of his life. He tried to forget her, to move on. But it was never that simple. No matter how hard he worked to erase the memories from his mind, no matter how many enemies he eliminated, the pain of losing Ilara stayed with him. The mind eraser's mission now was to eliminate Zoroth, the enemy, leader who threatened to destroy Earth. But as he stood in the shadows, preparing for the task ahead, all he could think about was Ilara. Was she happy? Was she safe? Had she forgotten him completely? He didn't have the answers, and he didn't know if he ever would. But he had a job to do, and he couldn't afford to let his feelings get in the way. Still, a part of him wondered if he could ever truly let go of her. As he moved through the stronghold, silently taking out guards and avoiding detection, his mind kept returning to her. He could almost hear her voice, her laughter echoing in his ears. He could still feel the warmth of her hand in his, the softness of her lips when they kissed. He had erased everything, yet somehow she remained with him. The further he got into Zoroth's base, the more his doubts grew. Could he truly kill Zoroth without questioning it? Could he really continue to do his job without letting the past destroy him? The mission, the war, all seemed so much less important now. He was no longer just a weapon for the galaxy. He was a man who had loved and lost. Finally, he reached Zoroth's inner chambers, the place where the alien leader was rumored to be hiding. The mission was nearly over. But just as he prepared to break down the door and end it all, something unexpected happened. A voice familiar yet foreign called out from the shadows. "Do you remember me, Mind Eraser?" The Mind Eraser froze. The voice, ... It couldn't be. He spun around, his heart pounding in his chest. There, standing in front of him, was the Mind Eraser's heart raced as he stared at Alara, his former love, standing before him in the dim light of the stronghold. It felt like a dream, a nightmare, perhaps. Hadn't seen her in years, not since he had erased her memories and torn their lives apart. And yet, here she was, alive, standing before him. "Do you remember me, Mind Eraser?" Alara asked again, her voice soft but firm. He couldn't answer at first. His mind was spinning. He had erased her memories, made her forget him, forget everything they had shared. But now, here she was, speaking to him as if nothing had changed. How was this possible? I don't understand," he said, his voice trembling slightly, betraying him for the first time in years. You shouldn't remember me." Lara stepped closer, her eyes searching his face, as if trying to piece together a puzzle. "I don't know what happened," she said, "but I remember you. I know I do. It's like there's a piece of me that's always known you, and now it's all coming back." The Mind Eraser took a step back, trying to regain control of the situation. This wasn't part of the plan. He was here to kill Zorith, to finish his mission, but now everything was spinning out of control. He had never expected this. Never. "In a million years, why are you here?" he asked, trying to focus. "You shouldn't be here." His words felt weak, like he was speaking to a ghost. "I was sent to stop you," Alara said, her voice breaking the tension. "The enemy knew you would come. They knew you would be the one to destroy Zorith, and they knew what you could do. But they've been watching you, Mind Eraser. They've been waiting for you to make a mistake." The Mind Eraser's eyes narrowed. "What do you mean? What mistake?" She shook her head slowly. "They're using me. They've been using me. All along, and I didn't even know. They made me believe I was working for the right side, for the good of the galaxy. But it's all a lie. Zorith, the ones you're here to destroy, they're not the real enemy. The real enemy is the people who sent you here." The words hit him like a slap. He couldn't understand it. His mission, the one that had always seemed so clear, was suddenly clouded in doubt. "You're lying," he said, his voice cold. "This is just a trick." Alara stepped closer again, her eyes filled with sadness and something else, something he couldn't quite name. "It's not a trick, Mind Eraser. They've been controlling everything. It's true. And they're using your memories, your power against you. The same people who gave you the mission to kill Zorith, they knew what you could do. They knew you would follow orders without asking questions." The Mind Eraser felt his breath catch in his throat. He had always trusted the orders he had been given. He had always believed in the mission, in the higher purpose. But now Alara was telling him everything he had worked for, everything he had done, it had been part of a lie. "I didn't know," he whispered, his voice cracking. "I didn't know they were using me." "Couldn't have known," Alara said gently. "But you can stop now. You don't have to keep being their weapon." The Mind Eraser's mind was a whirlwind of confusion. He had been a soldier, a weapon, all his life. He had been trained to follow orders, to do whatever it took to complete the mission. Now everything was changing. Lara had always been his weakness, the one thing that had made him human. And now she was here again, forcing him to confront the truth. "I don't know what to do," he said, his voice quiet and full of regret. "I don't know if I can stop. The mission is everything I've ever known. It's who I am." "No," Alara replied firmly. "It's not who you are. It's what they made you into. You still have a choice." The Mind Eraser's mind raced. He had erased Elara's memories once before, making her forget him, forget everything. And now she was standing here, reminding him of what he had lost. He felt the weight of her words pressing on him, forcing him to face the truth about himself. "Don't know how to undo what I've done," he said, his voice filled with pain. Alara placed a hand on his shoulder, her touch warm and gentle. "You don't have to undo it. You just have to make a new choice. You have to decide who you want to be now." The words sank into his mind like a stone sinking into the depths of the ocean. He had been living in a world of black and white, following orders without question, believing he was doing the right thing. But now, Ilara was showing him that there were other paths, other choices. "Come with me," Ilara said, her voice soft but full of hope. "We can stop them. Together." The mind eraser looked at her, the woman he had once loved, the woman he had erased from his life. His heart pounded in his chest as he considered her words. Could he trust her? Could he trust himself? "Always been alone," he said quietly. "I've never known anything else." Ilara smiled faintly. "Then it's time you learned what it feels like to be part of something more." The mind eraser felt a weight lift off his shoulders, but it was replaced by a new kind of fear of what would happen if he chose to follow her. If he chose to change his path, he would have to face the consequences of his past actions. He would have to face the war he had been part of, and the people he had hurt along the way. But for the first time in a long while, he wasn't sure if he was ready to fight in this part. The mind eraser confronts the truth about his mission and his past. Discovering that the people who sent him on the mission may not be as trustworthy as he once believed, he is given a chance to choose a different path, but the decision isn't easy. "Let me know if you'd like to adjust." The mind eraser stood frozen, staring at Ilara, his heart pounding in his chest. She had told him the truth. The enemy wasn't Zoroth, and his mission wasn't as clear-cut as he had believed. The real enemy had been hiding in the shadows, manipulating everything, including him. And now, Ilara was offering him a chance to stop it all, to break free from the control that had ruled his life. But he was torn. Everything he had ever known, everything he had ever believed in, was falling apart. The mission had been his purpose, his reason for living. Without it, who was he? Could he really walk away from everything? Lara watched him, her eyes filled with understanding. She knew how hard it would be for him. She knew the pain he had carried with him all these years, but she also knew that he had the power to change. She had seen it in him before. "You don't have to be their weapon anymore," she said softly. "We can stop them. Together." The mind eraser looked at her, his thoughts racing. He had erased her memories once, thinking it was the only way to protect her. Now, she was here, asking him to trust her, to fight against everything he had been taught to believe in. Could he do it? Could he really change? For a moment he closed his eyes and tried to push the doubt away. But it was there, gnawing at him. The mission, the orders, the years of living without connection, without love. Could he let go of it all? "I don't know if I can do this," he whispered. "I've spent my whole life following orders. I don't know how to live without them." Lara took a step closer, her voice gentle but firm. "You've already done something you never thought you could. You've erased the one thing that mattered most to you. You can also undo that. You can choose to remember, to fight for something more." His heart ached as her words sank in. He had erased her. He had erased everything they had shared. And now, here she was, asking him to remember. But could he remember the man he used to be? The man who had loved her, without falling apart? "I've made so many mistakes," he said, his voice filled with regret. "How can I fix them?" "You don't have to fix everything," Ilara replied. "You just have to start with one thing yourself. You don't have to be their tool anymore. You can choose to fight for what's right." The mind eraser stood still, processing her words. The weight of his past, the mistakes he had made, pressed down on him. But Ilara was right. Didn't have to keep living the way he had been. He could choose to fight for something better. He could choose to be the person he had once been, the person who had loved her. "I don't know if I can change," he said, his voice low. "You already have," Ilara said. "You're here, aren't you? You're questioning everything. It's the first step. Now we just have to finish what we started." The mind eraser looked into her eyes, seeing the hope there, the trust. For the first time in years, he felt a spark of something inside him, something more than just the mission. It was the feeling of possibility, of a future, of hope. He nodded slowly. Right. Let's do this. But I can't do it alone." "You won't be alone," Ilara said, smiling softly. "I'm with you, and together, we can stop them." And the two of them moved quickly through the stronghold. making their way toward the control room where the enemy had been hiding, pulling the strings behind the scenes. The mind eraser's heart raced as they approached. But for the first time in years, he felt something other than fear. He felt determined. They reached the door to the control room, and Alara stepped forward, checking the security panel. She quickly disabled the locks, and the door slid open silently. Inside, the room was dimly lit, filled with rows of computers and monitors. At the far end of the room, a group of soldiers stood guard, but they didn't see them. The mind eraser and Alara were like shadows, moving silently, unseen. Alara whispered to him, "We can take them out quietly, without anyone noticing." The mind eraser nodded. He wasn't the soldier he had once been, the cold killer who erased memories without a second thought. He was something else now. He was someone who could fight for a cause, for a future. They moved quickly, neutralizing the guards with swift, controlled actions. The mind eraser's hands worked with precision, but there was no emotion in it now. This wasn't a mission. This wasn't just about killing. This was about stopping the ones who had used him, the ones who had controlled his life. As they reached the central console, Alara stepped forward and began to hack into the system. "We need to shut down their network," she said, typing. "Quickly. Once we do that, they'll be powerless." The mind eraser kept watch, his eyes scanning the room for any signs of movement. Everything felt different now. He wasn't just a weapon anymore. He was part of something bigger. Part of a team. A fight for freedom. The sound of alarms suddenly echoed through the hallways, and Alara cursed under her breath. "They've found us." The mind eraser looked at her, his expression steady. "We're not done yet." With a single movement, he activated the self-destruct sequence on the enemy system. The room around them began to shake as the countdown started. "We've got 2 minutes," he said. Alara's fingers flew over the keyboard, completing the shutdown just in time. The system went silent, and the alarms stopped. They had won. The enemy's control was broken. But as they turned to leave, the mind eraser knew this was only the beginning. They were no longer running from the past. They were moving forward, fighting for something worth fighting for. Together. In this part, the mind eraser begins to break free from the control he's been under and starts to fight back against the real enemy. He and Alara work together to take down the system, and the mind eraser realizes that change is possible. He's willing to embrace it. "Let me know if you'd like to adjust anything," asked Chat. The mind eraser stood in the ruins of the control room, the lights flickering above as the system collapsed around them. The battle was over, but the victory felt hollow. It had successfully shut down the enemy's network, taken down their defenses, and stopped the operation that had controlled his life for so long. But as the dust settled, the weight of what had happened began to sink in. He had betrayed everything he believed in, and now there was no going back. He looked at Alara, who was standing beside him, her face a mix of relief and exhaustion. She had been his guide, his anchor through this entire ordeal, and now they were both standing in the aftermath of their choices. They had taken down the enemy together, but it had come at a cost. Alara had tried to show him the truth, to make him see the lies that had controlled his every action. She had opened his eyes to the manipulation he had been under for years. And now, as the truth settled in, he felt the weight of every life he had taken, every person he had erased, and every mistake he had made. "I don't know if I can ever undo what I've done," he said, his voice low and filled with regret. Alara stepped closer to him, placing a hand on his shoulder. "You can't change the past, mind eraser. No one can. But you can choose what you do from here. You can choose to make it right." He looked down at her hand, then up into her eyes. There was so much pain in his heart, so much guilt. He had erased her memories once, thinking he was protecting her. And now, here she was, standing beside him, willing to help him make things right. She had given him a second chance when he didn't deserve one. "I've spent my whole life following orders," he said, his voice breaking. "I thought I was doing the right thing, but now I see how many lives I've ruined. Your past doesn't define you, Elara said gently. What matters now is the choice you make in this moment. You don't have to be the mind eraser anymore. You can be someone better. He swallowed hard, trying to push down the emotions that threatened to overwhelm him. He had always thought he was a weapon, a tool for the galaxy's defense. He had never thought he could be anything more. But now, as Elara's words echoed in his mind, he realized that there was more to him than just his abilities. He wasn't just a soldier. He was a man who had loved, who had lost, and who had the chance to rebuild. Thank you, he whispered, his voice hoarse. I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I'm so sorry for everything. Elara smiled softly, her eyes filled with compassion. You don't need to apologize. We've all made mistakes. What matters is that we learn from them. They stood together in silence for a moment, the weight of the past heavy on their shoulders. The mission had been completed, the enemy defeated, but the real battle was only just beginning. It stopped one threat, but the war was far from over. There were still enemies out there, still people who needed saving. And now, the mind? Eraser had to decide where he fit into all of it. I've done so many things I'm not proud of, he said finally, his voice filled with determination. But I won't let this be the end of me. I won't let it define me. Elara nodded. It's not the end. It's just the beginning. The sound of footsteps interrupted their conversation, and they both turned toward the door. The remaining soldiers who had once served under the enemy were now on their way to stop them. But the mind eraser no longer felt the cold, calculating fear he once would have. He wasn't alone anymore. He had Elara, and together they could face whatever came next. Let's finish this, he said. His voice steady and full of resolve. They moved quickly through the stronghold, taking out the remaining guards with the same precision that had made him feared across the galaxy. But this time, he wasn't just following orders. He was fighting for something more, fighting for the future. For redemption, for the chance to do things right when they reached the final chamber. They were confronted by the last of the enemy's leaders. The man stood at the control panel, his back to them, his hands hovering over the console that controlled the fate of millions. You're too late, the leader sneered, turning to face them. You think you've won? The war is far from over. The galaxy is mine to control. The mind eraser didn't hesitate. He stepped forward, his expression cold and determined. Not anymore. With a single move, he activated the shutdown sequence on the leader's control panel, effectively ending the enemy's plans for good. The leader's eyes widened in shock as his power crumbled away. He made one last, desperate attempt to fight back, but it was too late. The mind eraser had made his choice. There was no turning back now. As the leader crumpled to the ground, defeated, the mind eraser turned to Elara. The weight of their actions hung in the air, but there was no regret in his eyes. He had made his choice. He had chosen to fight for what was right, to fight for the people who couldn't fight for themselves. We did it, Elara said quietly, a small smile on her face. The mind eraser nodded. We did. But even as they stood victorious, the reality of what they had done began to sink in. The galaxy was far from safe. They had taken down one enemy, but there were still others out there, and the mind eraser knew that he would never truly escape the consequences of his past. But with Elara by his side, he was ready to face whatever came next. They had a long road ahead of them, but for the first time in his life, he felt like he was walking the right path. In this part, the mind eraser faces the emotional consequences of his actions and begins to come to terms with his past. Help! He starts the process of redemption, knowing that the road ahead will be difficult but worth fighting for. Let me know if you'd like it. The mind eraser stood at the edge of the cliff, overlooking the vast, empty expanse that stretched out before him. The wind was cool against his face, a sharp contrast to the burning thoughts inside his mind. The fight was over. The war that had defined so much of his life had come to an end, but the truth was, he didn't feel like he had one. He had stopped the enemy, yes, but the cost was far greater than he had ever imagined. Beside him, Elara stood in silence, her gaze fixed on the horizon. She had been his guide, his strength, and his reason for fighting. Without her, he wasn't. sure where he would be now. Together they had faced their past, fought back the shadows that had controlled them, brought down the enemies who had used them. But even now, with the battle won, there was still so much to be done. I used to think this day would feel different, the mind eraser said, his voice quiet, almost lost in the wind. I thought I'd feel like I finally did the right thing, but now, I don't know what to think. Alara turned to him, her expression soft. You've done what you could. You fought for what was right. That's all anyone can do. He nodded slowly, his mind still wrestling with the memories. Of everything he had done, the lives he had taken, the people he had erased, the moments that could never be undone. He had spent so many years living in the shadow of his past, following orders without question, thinking he was doing the right thing. But now, in the quiet aftermath, it felt like nothing could ever be truly fixed. You don't have to carry that burden forever, Alara said, her voice steady. You're not the man you were before. You've made a choice, and you're not defined by what you did. You can be more than that. The mind eraser turned to her, his eyes filled with uncertainty. But how? How do I move forward knowing what I've done? Alara placed a hand gently on his arm. You start by letting go. You've already taken the first step by standing here, by deciding to face your past. But now it's time to look forward, to choose who you want to be. It's not easy, but you don't have to do it alone. He looked at her for a long moment, her words sinking in. She was right. He had already made the hardest decision of all to fight for something better. And now he had to learn how to live with the consequences. It wouldn't be easy, and it wouldn't happen overnight, but for the first time in a long time, he felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe he could be more than just a weapon. I'm scared, he admitted, his voice raw. Scared that I'll never escape my past. Scared that no matter how hard I try, it won't be enough. Lara smiled softly. It's okay to be scared. It's okay to not have all the answers right now. But as long as you keep moving forward, you'll find your way. And I'll be here by your side every step of the way. For the first time in years, the mind eraser allowed himself to feel something hope. It was a small feeling, fragile and uncertain, but it was there. And it was enough to make him believe that maybe, just maybe, he could build a future. They stood together for a long time, watching the sun begin to set over the horizon. The world was quiet, peaceful, and it felt like a moment of calm after everything they had been through. The weight of the past was still there, but it no longer controlled him. He wasn't defined by his mistakes, and he didn't have to carry the burden alone. Alara turned to him, her eyes full of warmth and understanding. What do you want to do now? She asked, her voice gentle. He looked at her, his heart full of a feeling he hadn't experienced in so long, something that felt like peace. I want to help. I want to protect people. I want to be part of something that matters. Alara smiled, a bright, hopeful smile that reached her eyes. Then that's where we start. Together. The mind eraser took a deep breath, feeling the weight of his past start to lift. He knew it wouldn't be easy, and there would be days when the memories would threaten to pull him back into the darkness. But with Alara by his side, he felt like he could face whatever came next. He wasn't alone anymore. Didn't have to fight the battle within himself on his own. We have a long road ahead of us, he said, his voice steady. But I'm ready, Alara nodded, her hand finding his. We'll take it one step at a time. As they stood there, watching the stars begin to appear in the sky, the mind eraser realized that this was only the beginning. The galaxy was vast, and there would always be challenges to face, enemies to fight. But for the first time, he felt like he was ready to face it all, not as the mind eraser, the weapon, but as someone who had a purpose, someone who could choose to be better. And as the night grew darker, he knew that no matter what happened, he would always have one thing: hope for a future where he could make things right. In this final part, the mind eraser comes to terms with his past, begins to embrace the possibility of a new future, and realizes that redemption is a choice he can make. The Lara's support, he steps forward, ready to face whatever comes next. Let me know if you'd like any adjustments. Ask ChatGPT.